Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. I'm joined with a longtime friend, Paul Johnson, who used to coach with the Philly area Black Sox, which is how he and I first met. And he's moved on a little bit, in a little bit of a transition, coaching with an organization in Philly called the Urban Sports Zone Blue Jays, but hoping to get the Black Sox back up and running here once the virus and everything settles down. So, Paul, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Great to be with you here today.
No problem. Again, we go back a long time, and I think you and I first met when I was still coaching at Conrad Weiser Legion, which was back in the late 90s.
Yeah. I think at a Be Your Best conference, or maybe even somewhere around there.
Yeah. And then you started coming to some tournaments of ours, and continued to be a supporter once we took the complex over, so yeah, we've known each other for a long time. And it's funny, before we started recording, we both actually started coaching in 1990. That's kind of funny the way we're parallel in that way.
When you first met me, I had a big afro, and it was black, and your hair was all brown.
Yeah, it's funny. and I was probably about 50 pounds lighter than I am now, maybe more. Age will do that to us. But
yes.
It's good to be able to look back, and there's not a lot of people who can say they've been doing something for 30 years. I think that's one of the things that I've personally been very proud of, is just the longevity of doing it. So, I mean, what got you involved in coaching in the first place?
Yeah, well, I come from a single female-headed household, and still had a relationship with my dad, and my dad was really big into baseball. So started to love the game of baseball when I was younger, about 5 years old. Remember finding baseball cards on the street one time and picking them up, and even started baseball teams when I was younger, like around 7 or 8 or 9. So I knew I was big into organization and big into coaching back then. I was going to Drexel University from I was in West Philadelphia, and Drexel University is also in West Philadelphia. I would take the train, we call it the Market Frankfurt L, and I would come out of my house and sometimes see like crack vials on the street. One day I was on the L, and I was looking out the window, and I saw a baseball field at 55th and Market at Salvation Army, West Philadelphia. And I just took the initiative. I walked up there one day and said, I played baseball as a youngster, and I enjoyed baseball, and I wanted to find a way to give back to my community. So I volunteered, and I got into baseball, not over the wins and the championships and trophies. I don't know if you can see some up there. And those are all temporary. One day we'll be gone, and we'll be dust, and those trophies won't be even remembered. But I got into coaching for legacy and to try and do something positive for my community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know for me, I kind of just got thrown into it. So my first coaching experience was with an adult team, which I had formed, and quite frankly, it was kind of, I started it. I didn't necessarily want to coach, and here I was coaching my peers, guys who I'd went to high school with and stuff like that. But then I really did enjoy coaching. And then once I started coaching kids, it really kind of took off. And that same thing that you're talking about. I mean, I've got, a bunch of trophies and stuff that, at the end of the day, don't mean a whole lot to me anymore. I mean, every time we stepped on the field, we played to win. We had that competitive spirit, but it's just that connection you have with your players. I think you can never really replace that. And I know, we follow each other on Facebook, and just the other day I'd posted something about, one of my players who I hadn't talked to in probably 10, 12 years had just randomly reached out to me, and you had commented, about the same feeling that you get. So, again, over a course of 30 years, there's so many players out there, and, we kind of all go our separate ways. But, going back to that post, what type of feeling do you get when one of those guys reaches out to you?
Oh, it's almost undescribable. Uh, you know, in my class, I tell my teachers I'm Professor Johnson or Mr. Johnson because they refer to you as professor, because I don't know if that's a term of endearment or they just forget. But on the baseball field, they call me Coach Paul or Coach. And coaches, when you hear coach, that's one of the most satisfying titles that you can give anybody. It's a mentor, a leader, someone to be respected, someone that's compassionate, someone that listens. And when you get those calls from those players from years and years ago, my eyes beam up. I'm sweating. I'm just so excited. I start to recall the good, the bad, and the ugly, because when you're younger, you think you know it all, and we were younger too, and we thought we knew it all. And then when you hear players talk enthusiastically and appreciate your involvement in their lives, it's very humbling. And we're all in this just so we hope that we can make some type of impact on these players in some type of way, a positive impact on these players. So I'm really excited when I hear from players. Unfortunately, recently I heard about the death of one of my players on Facebook, and I reached out to him. I didn't get a chance to call him, but I did text him and did message him, and he appreciated it, and he said he was actually talking about me the other day before his dad passed. So
yeah,
it's good to be mentioned in those terms. And I told him if there's anything that he needs, and I do mean it, if there's anything that he needs, I'm here for him.
Yeah, it's definitely very humbling when you sit back and really consider some of the impact you've had on some of these kids. I know for me, it's the same way. When I first announced I was leaving Big Vision, and my wife and I were buying an RV and traveling throughout the country. One of my players who was one of those type of kids who he wasn't a bad kid. He was a good player, but he never quite reached his potential. And he was always one of those kids where you kind of thought, were you actually getting through to him? And he commented on my post I was leaving and getting out of coaching. And, what he had said absolutely floored me, because it was one of those things where it was like, again, in the moment, I didn't know for sure if I was actually getting through to him. And then, here he's probably 20 plus years after I'd coached him. He basically talked about the impact I had on his life, and how, I was the only coach that he had that politics weren't involved, that I gave everybody a fair shot. Like I said, it just really floored me. So I'm sure you've had many of those same things as well, where there's that one kid who you think, man, I just wish I could have got through to him. And then all of a sudden you find out, wow, I actually did get through to him, and it could be 5-10 years down the road. And I think that's one of the things that as a coach, you got to be kind of patient, because this is not an instant gratification career.
Yeah.
It's a lot of planting seeds, and you may not see those seeds. So, I mean, we live in an instant gratification world.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it, throughout your career that you've, kind of seen some of those seeds that you've planted flourish?
Yeah, and especially, with us coaching against each other and me coming to your tournament, especially recently, probably for probably 18 to 20 years of coaching, of my 30 years of coaching, most of them have been with those teenagers. And those teenagers are wild. Their hormones are all over their place. The minds are all over their place. And sometimes you are the only positive role model in their lives. We're both men of faith. And oftentimes the players will tell me that the only time that they've heard scripture or prayed that week is when we have a prayer before a game or after a game, regardless of whether we win or lose. I think that's important. I think it brings a sense of calmness and also a sense of hope to a lot of my players that really don't have any hope. But I think that over the years, I've seen a lot of players I've had some players that go down the wrong path, and I've had to write reference letters and what do you call it? Yeah, I guess reference letters or conduct letters for them, and talk about the good things that I've seen about them with our program, and that they just slipped off the road a little bit. But I've also seen a lot of my players go on to accept Jesus Christ as their personal savior, which is the most important thing, because that's long-lasting legacy way beyond our lifetimes. But I've seen players go on to college, graduate from college. You know, I'm not like one of these other coaches that has players that go on to Division I and go into the major leagues, and you know they promote that they have this cadre of players that do these things. I have players that go on to be doctors and lawyers and teachers and skilled craftsmen and construction workers, and they provide. They're giving back to their community. They're not taking from the community. They're giving back to their community. So if I can put somebody on the right path to be contributing members of their society, contributing family people that are now fathers. I don't have any kids myself, but I have some players that are now grandfathers, believe it or not, that, you know, we've been coaching that long. That's very humbling, and that's also gratifying. It's not instant gratification, but it's long-lasting gratification.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, you know, one of the things I want to point out is that, you know, you do coach in Philadelphia. So the majority of your kids are inner city kids. And like you had mentioned, they don't have a ton of resources. Most of them come from, you know, single mother, single father homes. You know, why did you feel it was so important to, you know, really go after that demographic of kids?
Yeah, well, I lived in Philadelphia, so obviously that's where my base started from. I live right up on the outskirts of Philadelphia now, but even since I've moved to the outskirts, I know that there are economic challenges and social challenges, and regardless of where I go, if I move a little bit further west, maybe I'll go to, you know, coach in the city of Chester or coach in the city of Wilmington. One of the things I've always tried to do is also bring a blend of athletes from different ethnic backgrounds, people of color, also the majority race, as well as people from different economic realms as well. But I always try to make my programs affordable. And I just feel as though baseball is a pathway to lifelong lessons: teamwork, dedication, loyalty, putting in hard work, just putting your energy towards something, and you know, all the other life skills that come with that you're going to learn later in life. And I felt that it was important to provide players from any social economic condition, but primarily in the city. But also, we've had some teams that are blends of city kids and some outskirt suburban kids, and those have been the best experiences of my life. Is when I can have an integrated team together with people from all different backgrounds, and when people look beyond skin color or look beyond checkbook, they could see that we have a lot of similarities more than we have differences.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And that's one of the things that with the foundation, we had really, probably within the last 3 or 4 years, focused on that integration to get, you know, again, whether color your skin or your economic status, you know, getting those kids together and understanding that at the end of the day, we're a lot more alike than we are different. So, you know, I love the fact that the diversity is something that you've, you know, always focused on, and getting a lot of different kids from a lot of different backgrounds on the same field. Because I know once we really started to expand upon that, you know, we saw some really special things happen. I mean, kids that otherwise would never even consider being friends of each other become very close, and being able to use the game to, you know, to help articulate that.
I want to thank you also for embracing us and also providing opportunities for us. You know, sometimes we didn't have $800 to coming to your tournaments, and you would say, Paul, we want you to be there. We want the Black Sox to be there, or the White Sox, or whatever the names of my teams were at the time, and knew our financial situation. I don't charge the kids a lot. I try to barely break even. And we were talking before this podcast, oftentimes we've written checks or subsidized the teams, and our wives are like, where's all this money going? And our names aren't on the back of their shirts, but we're the ones that are sponsoring them. So I just want to thank you for being considerate and giving us an opportunity to play in your tournaments. And every time they come out, win or lose, and most of the times, I think from the beginning, you've been wood bat, and that's been a great experience for my players. Usually, we may not win, but they're very low-scoring, competitive games a lot of times, and puts the emphasis on defense and pitching, and shows the players that they need to focus on those areas of the game as well. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
No doubt. I also want to point out that back in 2014, you were recognized by the ABCA. You received the Quarter Century of Leadership and Dedication to Baseball Award, which I think is awesome. What was your reaction when you first received that award, when you heard that you were receiving it, and then to actually get it down at the convention?
Well, I was humbled. I was thankful to God for giving me the opportunity to coach for 25 years. So roller coaster career, if we talk about wins and losses, but if we talk about impact, I'm hoping that I had an impact for him and had impact and influence on other people's lives. I pray that I have another 25 years so I can get to 50. That would be a great accomplishment. I know that sometimes those coaches that are 70 years old, 80 years old, that are still out on the baseball field, that are given every little nugget that they have, are some of the most revered coaches. And you start to reflect back on your career. I was talking to one player recently, and I was like, did you play with them? Because they all kind of run together a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't you remember Coach Paul that day that we went? Like, no, I've been doing this 25 years. I can't remember. So I was very humbled by the honor, and I thank the players. I thank the players and the parents. It's not about me. It's about the players, the parents, and the community supporting this career.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Was there any one coach when you were younger, when you were playing, that had an incredible influence on your life?
I had two, and they were interesting in different realms. One guy, we called him Boozy. It's not because he drank. He was a painter. Sometimes he would come out to the baseball field in all of his painting uniforms, but he was there dedicated to coach the game. And I wasn't a great player. I was the guy that you stuck in right field. Right field. Worried about if he could catch, batted at the ninth, batted in the 9-hole, hoping he was either I was going to get a walk, maybe get a hit or a strikeout. But he gave me a chance. He gave me an opportunity. And then as I got older, I got a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. When I started to play youth baseball, I played for a team called the Fairmount Mustangs, and we had a coach named Blake. And he would often say, don't worry, what was his saying? Don't worry about them, worry about yourself. Meaning, don't worry about what other people do to you, worry about what you can do, what the controllables are. And he gave me an opportunity to play and showed me that even at an early adult age that I had the skills to play. But, when you're on a 25-person team, I think it also showed me that my career was going to be in coaching rather than playing as an adult, because when you're on a 25-person team and there's 30 games and you're only playing a few games, you're like, maybe I should dedicate my time towards coaching instead of – because the first 3 years of coaching, I was coaching and playing. And then, after playing for a few years, I said, well, maybe I need to focus my efforts on coaching. So I would say those are two instrumental coaches in my
yeah. Was that Ernie Blake by any chance?
Yes, yeah, Ernie Blake. Yeah.
I know Ernie, or I knew him. Is he still alive? I don't even know if
no, he deceased. He passed a few years ago.
That's a shame. He was a good guy. That's
yeah.
funny. It's really odd that he actually.
It's a small world. It's a small world.
Yeah.
We know a lot of people.
Yeah, he brought some Fairmount Park Mustangs teams up to our tournaments, some of the adult teams.
Okay, yeah.
And they had some pretty good teams back in the day, no doubt doubt about it. So that's really funny that, because I always thought Ernie was a great guy. So that's really funny that, he kind of touched both of our lives in different ways.
He was intense. He was intense, but he was also very compassionate too.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think that's a good combination of a coach.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we're just about out of time here, but as I told you before we started recording, I'd always like to ask my guests, one final question before we sign off. Because the podcast is kind of influenced by a Michael Franti song where the lyrics open up by saying, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So what is one of the little things that you feel you've done in your life that have helped make the world a better place?
Well, like I said before, the scores and scores of players, or even just a handful of players that come to me afterwards, after they've been playing. I was texting a student the other day. He sent me a picture, and he sent me a picture of him playing for the Fairmount Park A-League. I was like, what team is this? Why are you sending this to me? He's like, well, some of the players that I coached were on that Fairmount Park A-League team. They were now continuing their passion for the game as an adult, even after playing for me 10, 15 years later. And then he was texting me, do you have any pictures? I said, yeah, they're somewhere around here. I got to find them. I have so many packets. Back then we were using disposable cameras or regular cameras. We didn't have cell phones. So they're in photo book, album books and so forth. But those memories and those players and seeing how they've moved on in their, not just their career, professional career, but how they're being responsible family members too. Whether it's fathers, husbands, grandfathers, uncles, so on, and how they're giving back to their family and their community. That's really what I'm most proud of. That hopefully God put me somewhere in their life where I could have an impact or provide some tidbits of knowledge along the way.
Well,
I'm trying not to cry. I'm trying not to cry.
I'm the same way. When you really think about it, you can definitely become, overwhelmed with emotion. So, I commend you on the work you've done, being a light to these kids. I appreciate you taking time out during this kind of crazy time that we're living in right now. And, certainly wish you the best of luck. And I've told everybody, don't be surprised if, I shoot you a text and, sometime in the future here and say, hey, we happen to be in the area. We're going to roll the RV up and hang out with you for a little bit. So
I'm right off of I-95, so not that far away.
No doubt. So, folks, as always, be sure to check out my website and the rest of my blogs and podcasts at danclouser.com. Paul, thanks again for joining me, and again, God bless you for everything you're doing out there for those kids. I appreciate the time for sure.
Thank you. God bless you as well.